Welcome to Made for Mondays, the source for digging a little deeper into the Believers Church Sunday messages and finding ways to apply them to our daily lives. Together, let's take a deeper look and find a way to bring Mondays back to life.
Hey everybody, welcome to Made for Mondays. I'm Rochelle, the Outreach Director at Believers Church, and we are really thrilled to go ahead and dig further into what happened on Sunday. But first, I would love to introduce to you who we have today. So I'll let you actually introduce yourselves.
Hey there, Rochelle.
Hi.
It's me, Jamie.
Hey,
and
Jamie.
what a nice change from the normal Samuel setup that we have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We could call me Sam if we
No.
need to. Okay.
Nope. Rochelle's great.
Sounds good. Who else we have?
Oh, good morning, everybody. I'm Raymond. I am a member of Believers.
You are not just a member of Believers. Tell folks what you're a part of an impact team.
Oh, I am. I'm part of the parking and safety team. I think that's the name of our team now.
Okay.
I just say I'm part of the security team, usually, yes.
And Raymond's also a part of a B group. We're in B group together. And a regular listener to the pod. Often get questions
Yes.
from Raymond.
Also known as Raymond and Kimberly and Raymond.
Yes.
I'm Raymond
Yes.
from Kimberly and Raymond.
Exactly. Yes. So great to have you on the pod.
Thank you. A special invited guest.
Yeah.
And I am Jennifer, and I am the group's pastor here at Believers.
Hi, I'm so glad that you guys are all joining us today. So we're going to jump in and talk about what we did this weekend. How was everybody's weekend?
My weekend was consistently the same as all of my weekends. Very, very boring. But last week I went to the Outer Banks, Thursday, Friday, I think it was. And probably the most exciting thing that has happened to me so far this summer is I paddle boarded for the very first time.
Ooh.
Raymond.
Rookie
He was
mistake.
really excited about that.
Yeah. Rookie mistake. Yeah, so that was super fun. Anyway, got up on the ocean side, and I'm not a surfer or anything like that, but this didn't require surf skills.
Okay.
It did require that you stand on a board, but fell a couple times, and then lo and behold, I was able to do it. It was super fun.
Nice.
Yeah,
It's balancing.
that's
Balancing
It's
skills.
good core
Yeah,
exercise.
good
Yeah.
exercise.
Yeah, I need to get a pool and put a paddleboard out there
Oh, practice.
and do that all the time. Yeah, it'd be really good for me.
You can borrow our pool.
Okay, that'd be
You
great.
just buy the paddleboard.
Okay.
Got you covered.
Outstanding.
Nice. You're getting more adventurous these days then, because you guys did the brewery thing the other week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's summertime.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
there you go.
yeah, we're out and about.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else did you guys do this weekend?
Raymond?
Well, Saturday, obviously it was boring because I went to a baseball game
Oh, yeah.
at Harbor Park, but Jamie didn't remember, so it would have been memorable.
Yeah.
But we went with our B group.
Our
yeah.
B group went
Yes.
to Harbor Park. I had to leave early because it's Saturday night, and I don't stay out late on Saturdays because I have to get ready for Sunday. But the game fell apart right after I left.
Yeah, it was a good game, but the Tides lost in the ninth inning. Yes, it did.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It was very humid, though. That's
Yeah.
what it was.
Very humid, but we weren't in the sun, and there was a little breeze. So
Yes.
it really was not bad.
Yeah.
It was lovely. I had a good time.
That's fantastic.
The breeze saved us as well because I had a wedding this weekend, which was absolutely wonderful, but it was an outdoor wedding, so we were worried about like the 100-degree weather.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it ended up being really nice with the breeze and stuff. So that was really cool. Really beautiful wedding.
Was it local?
It was local.
Nice. Yeah, it was steamy.
It was very steamy.
Yeah. Thankfully, I was able to have our first beach day when it was really hot on Saturday. And it was extra special because you guys know I'm a foster mom. And so we had a visit with my foster daughter's twin sister. And we got to take her away for a few hours, which
Nice.
usually we have to sit in this really cold, damp, awkward room for an hour with her, and we got to take her to the beach, and the water was so refreshing. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
fairly relaxing.
That's awesome.
So yeah, we enjoyed it.
Did the boys go too?
Yes. Yeah.
Did they
that
have fun?
They had so much fun. And so the girls are twins, and I had a lot of anticipation for the boys meeting the
Yeah.
twins to see if they could tell them apart and how they were going to feel. And instantly they could tell them right apart. Yeah. I think because they're so close to my daughter. So
Yeah.
it was, it was the first time they actually walked on the sand because we got water shoes.
Okay.
Apparently, all my parent friends are like, well, you didn't have them before? I'm like, that was a game changer. They felt invincible. I was a little nervous in the water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
they weren't
awesome.
as squeamish. Yeah. So, all right, guys. Well, I'm glad everybody's been able to enjoy the summer weather. We've also, as we've been going through summer and this year, been working through a Bible reading plan, working through the New Testament. So I'd love to hear what are some of the things that really stood out from this week's reading or recent readings that we've been doing in Acts.
Yeah, so kind of for me, it's just the continuation of what we talked about last week because Paul is currently in the process of getting sent to Rome to sit in prison for a while. And it's so inspiring, but also almost incredible, the perseverance of Paul. I mean, it's such a remarkable story. And I just love the book of Acts. It's like the best documentary ever. And I love documentaries. And it's just so incredible. So yeah, for me, it's just the same. It's kind of a repeat from last week, but Paul continues to just really inspire me with his boldness and his endurance. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say the same thing. Like, I love the fact that he is so respectful
Yeah.
to, the authorities and the people he's talking to, but also the confidence he has.
Yeah.
Like when they want to send him back to Jerusalem, he's like, nope, like I'm a Roman citizen. This is where I should be tried. And it's cool to see that balanced out.
Also kind of interesting, it was earlier this last week, but he heard like directly from God who told him not to be fearful because he would proclaim the gospel in Rome. Mm-hmm. Well, that gives you a certain amount of confidence if you know, like I was just thinking about the confidence that you mentioned, but part of that confidence was like he had heard from God. And so that gave him the confidence to know, like, no matter what's going to happen, I'm going to be well enough to make it to Rome and proclaim the gospel. So yeah, pretty cool. And I hope everyone's kind of jumping in on the reading. Everyone needs a Raymond. Raymond sends the daily schedule to our B group every single day.
What? That's incredible.
Yeah. He's only missed like 1 or 2 days.
I think I missed one and nobody checked on me.
Gosh, I'm going to have to talk to your leaders about that.
Yeah.
Yes. Wow.
We should have been concerned. I don't know. Yeah.
I love that. Well, speaking of which, if someone is coming into this experience, how can they jump in and find out where to join?
Yeah, probably the easiest thing is just on social every Sunday afternoon around 1 o'clock. Jeremy posts our reading schedule for the week. And the other thing is, if you don't follow us on social, in your Believers Church app, under the outlet at the bottom of that is the reading schedule for that coming week. So those are probably the two best
Things
places.
that hundreds and thousands of people read. Is that?
No, it gets emailed to thousands and read by hundreds. Yeah. No, it gets sent to, I don't even know what the number is now. It's several thousand folks, and it gets a few hundred opens. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still, whatever. It's fine.
Yeah.
In case people didn't know, we are actually, in our daily bread, we're exactly 1 week behind them.
Oh, is that right?
It's the same reading plan from the daily bread.
Is that right?
Except we're 1 week behind because we started January 8th.
We did.
Wow.
Yes. And
So
they have
how-
Who knew? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's an interesting fact.
I
had
just
no
learned
idea.
something. Yeah, we could have made this way easier. Now we know.
Now we know.
Next year we'll start looking for a January plan to start in January. We'll just share that.
I love
That would save
you know
Jeremy
that.
a big headache. So that'd be great.
Wow. I love that you know that. I'm like, where can we get a Raymond for our group again?
Right.
I'm a weird numbers calendar map kind of guy. So
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious. Do you know what Enneagram number you are?
no, but Kimberly does.
We need to have her on the pod
Right.
with Raymond to
Yeah.
get the whole picture. Yeah.
I gotcha. Noted. We'll do a follow-up.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. Well, this is the segment where we usually get to a question from a listener or
Oh, yeah.
the what the what? Yeah.
Oh, Heather, I think
Wow.
we've got some competition.
I don't know what just happened.
I feel like that is 100% the new theme.
Oh, yes.
I feel an email from Samuel coming.
Yeah. He's going to be voting. It'll be 1-0 for you to be the segment
man.
leader for that. Yeah.
I love
Heather's still on vacation, so she's not in the
Yeah.
office today, so she won't hear this. Maybe she'll hear this later. Maybe she's driving back. I don't even know what she's doing today. Maybe she's
Yeah.
driving back, and she's going to hear that. I think Heather's going to feel terribly threatened.
Oh no.
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, that's my girl, so I had to do it for her. I did
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
in honor of her.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just think of that as an extension
It's really good.
of Heather's.
And we don't have one
We don't
today.
have one. This is just where it would go. This is the place marker
Yeah.
for those of you who.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We actually do have one. We're just going to try to get to it next week.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. There we go.
and if you have questions, send them in, please. Made for Mondays at believerschurch.org. Don't make Raymond be the only one that sends a question. He's here. So if he has questions, he can just ask. So if you have questions, send them in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very cool. So yesterday was an incredible day around here.
It was a great day.
Yeah. There was a lot going on.
There was.
A lot going on. We kicked off our series Polarizing, which is so exciting. We're going to dig into that in a second. But we also got to celebrate baptisms.
We did.
Yeah.
One of my favorite days.
One of the best days.
Yeah.
ever.
So I think there were 14 or 15 folks that were baptized, and a lot of camp folks, which was really cool.
Yeah.
And handful of adults also, which was just really great. Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah.
And a bunch of people are starting to get in the rhythm of it. So people are sticking around and celebrating with those who are doing it. So yeah, really, really good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the energy that happens because there's so many families that come that are not connected to believers that
Yeah.
we just get to love on
Yep.
and be a part of that experience
Yeah.
with them. So
Yep. So good.
yeah, that was really great. And then we also had Discovery Experience going on. So I got to be in that. I
Oh,
was
nice.
running everywhere.
You were. You were busy.
yesterday. Yeah, busy day. But yeah, it was so fun. Just
What was
knowing-
the focus in Discovery Experience yesterday?
we talk a lot about sharing your story
Okay.
and then how we take our story and share the gospel outside of these
Oh,
walls.
so all about outreach.
All about outreach.
All right.
Yeah. So
Awesome.
I usually jump in there on
Very cool.
week 4. Yeah.
Awesome.
And then I always reference, the groups, which is interesting because I'm always like, I kind of wish Jen was in here because we talk about how serving together as a group is
Yeah.
one of the best ways to be able.
Did we have any graduates yesterday?
Yes, there were 3 graduates,
Okay.
but I had to run and get changed for baptism, so I actually didn't see the graduation.
Yeah. Tyler handles that. He
Yes.
plays the graduation music and all that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does. So, in kicking off Polarizing,
Yeah,
we were talking about a pretty big topic,
it was.
Black Lives Matter. So we're going to jump into some discussion about that.
All right, outstanding.
You want to give us a little short recap of kind of what we went over?
Sure. Yeah, so the controversy, I think, and I will say, of all of the topics, I really believe this is probably the least controversial of all of the topics because there is something that no matter where someone falls on, like there are some polarizing ideas around Black Lives Matter, but I think at the heart of it, anyone who loves Jesus and follows Jesus believes that all people matter, that people have dignity, we're created in the image of God. We all have a heart for justice and racial reconciliation. So I think there's so much that we all agree upon on this particular week that it's probably the least polarizing of the polarizing topics that we are going to talk about. And yet, I find it interesting that even though that's true, there's a lot of emotion around the topic.
Yeah.
And I think it's partly just because of the national experience we've had over the last few years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think something I've noticed a lot in all of these conversations we're going to be going over throughout this series is that we all, our culture sort of has this idea that I know it all, that I have all of the answers. And I know when I was growing up, which wasn't that long ago, but when I was growing up, we had things like encyclopedias, and we would research and ask questions and get partnered up with someone who was an elder and learn from them, because the culture leaned more towards I don't know it all. So when do you guys think there was really a shift in our culture from knowing everything and to not?
When was Wikipedia invented?
When was Wikipedia invented?
Yeah, when did Google hit the scene? I Google everything.
Yeah.
I Google 100 times a day.
Yeah.
And I know everything now because Google tells me everything. I don't know. Maybe it is Wikipedia and Google related.
I think it's related to social media just as much as everything seems like to be.
Yeah.
Social media and access electronically now, people think. And then people influence. So you think you don't research what people are telling you. You just take it at face value.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. And related to that, I think it's that whole echo chamber thing that I mentioned at the beginning of the message yesterday, where we choose the news based on what we want to be told. And we surround ourselves with people who believe exactly the way we do. So we're very rarely, just generally speaking, we're very rarely challenged about our thoughts and views. And when you're never challenged, you're constantly being patted on the back that you do know everything.
Yeah.
You just start to believe it.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
And I also think because of social media, there's less person to person. So if we have this conversation face to face, we're going to be more respectful of the other person. We see them as a person. When you're behind a keyboard, you're brave. You're willing to say anything, and you don't care how you're hurting somebody's feelings, or how insensitive you are, or how just out there what you're saying is.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, not only do we not listen very well, we don't even talk face to face.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so true.
And I love that you said that, because we don't know what we don't know, right? And so a lot of times what we're being fed is what they want us to hear.
Yes.
And so there's some things that I find out, like I never knew that. I never knew that was a thing. I think that was even something you said in your sermon yesterday with the pastor at the march, where you're like, I didn't know all those facts.
Yeah.
And so when we don't have all the information, we can't always come up with the right solution or
Conclusion.
thoughts or conclusion.
Yeah. Right.
But I love that you said face to face is so important, because a lot of times we're just hearing these things that are feeding us and bringing up emotions in us. And it's not in our town. It's not in our city. We don't know all the details. And like you said, instead of figuring those things out, we automatically take a position and we end up polarizing from each other. The people our neighbors right next door to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I notice a lot of times I'll see a headline, and if you don't read the story, you don't realize that headline is just to grab you.
Yeah.
Yes.
There are a lot more details, and there's a lot more nuance, and it's not just, black and white. There's a lot of gray area in life.
There is.
And if you don't take the time to learn, to read, to talk, you're not going to see it. You're just going to see I'm here or I'm here. So just like you said, polarizing, black, white, over here, whatever,
Yeah. I remember being in school, and there was this huge section we had in English when we were writing where you had to learn how to cite your sources. And I have had several conversations with younger folks recently where they'll say something and then you say, okay, well, what are your sources? Yeah. And that's not even a thing anymore. And I think there was even a bigger push when we went through pandemic and with virtual education and some of that stuff sort of getting more in the hands of students, but not necessarily having to have the accountability of saying, when I put these words out there, it's backed by knowledge, experience, research, things that have happened. And I think they're learning it too from us adults who are just maybe I think I can get lazy myself, getting a little lazy with, I got to look that up before I just
so good.
spew it out there. So I think there's been several shifts, key moments and shifts in the last several years. So as we are going to get more into this conversation, I know, Jamie, you talked about a little while ago, this is an emotional thing that happens, especially because of all of the racial tensions that have come up throughout pandemic and the last few years. And then we're here 3 years later, which is not that long.
Yeah.
That's like a blink.
Right.
My kids are still babies, and that's how old my kid my kid is. So as we approach these conversations, you talked about the rules of engagement.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to dig into those a little more. How can we come to the table with these chats and do it in a way that honors Jesus?
Yeah. So the panel that we had, and Raymond was a part of that. We just had these ground rules that we just we knew that most of the topics have a fairly significant emotional charge around them, and so what was the coolest part of that whole panel was, at least I thought it was great. I'm not sure that every church. I don't know. I don't want to disparage. I just think like it was unique. I'll say it that way, to have that large a circle of folks engaging in conversation about these topics, and to have so many viewpoints represented in the room. Like, it was just pretty interesting. I've in my college circles, everyone was encouraged to be exactly the same, and difference of opinions on theological or even moral or whatever issues were not encouraged or welcomed. But everyone in that room loved Jesus and loved Believers Church, even though they've arrived at some very different conclusions about some of these things that we talked about. And so that helped. That helped our circle to be able to. I mean, we could commit to these rules of engagement, and it wasn't very hard because we all know each other. We all love each other. We all know we love Jesus. We all know we love this church. It's a little harder to follow those same rules of engagement outside the walls of this place because not everyone shares those. We had enough in common that it helped us to see each other, I guess. But yeah, being kind and respectful and giving space to listen, being an active listener, asking questions, not being argumentative, not debating someone, not talking over someone. All of those kinds of things were the rules of engagement. And those things are the opposite of those things. It's almost like our memory verse. The opposite of those things are the rules of engagement on social media and in other places, where no one listens. Everyone's talking over everyone and debating everything.
Yeah. What have been your experiences with conversations like this? I'm going a little off script.
That's good. That's all good.
What have been your experiences with these sort of conversations, before this chat that we had yesterday? Have you felt like these were values that you guys have had in different relationships and different groups that you guys were processing heavy issues? Ooh, okay.
Yeah, I have really struggled about even what to say here because of some things and people in my life who I love dearly. And we walked through some really hard things 3 years ago or however long it was. And this group of people, we've been together for years. We love each other dearly. We are family in so many ways. And we get together, the women get together every week and we pray for each other. And when a lot of this tension happened, I think it was just, it was really hard for some people. And to discern outside voices and stuff. And sometimes, that happens and we get emotional about it. And And that happened in the group. And the funny thing is, I was talking to my husband about it the other day. It's like we were just talking about, we should totally start a podcast. Look at us. We're like from all walks of life. Like we're from every country. Like we should start a podcast on it. And the enemy wants nothing more to get in and divide that unity. And we saw that happen. We walked it out. And I'm just going to talk about my response to that. When it was brought up to me, and there was kind of like some accusations of some things and some questions. I don't even want to say accusations, maybe some questions. And when push came to shove with it, when it like kind of continued, like my response was wrong in that. And I really went into it thinking like, I do this for a living. I mediate all the time. I got this, because it was really between two separate people in our group. And, but I should have listened to the Spirit in that and said, you're too emotionally involved in this. You don't have all the answers and you are not ready for this. And you talked about humbleness.
Yeah.
And that was a time where I should have taken a step back and been humble and said, yeah, I can't be in the middle of this. But I didn't. And because of that, my emotions came out at a time when it was not helpful. And I think anytime we're in a situation like that, and we cannot just allow the Spirit to work in our own lives before we present. And it's not wrong to have emotions around that, right? Yeah. But to identify what our motive is and going into a conversation and saying something. Because when we're emotional, we don't even realize the things we're saying. And it cuts deep and it's hurtful. Proverbs 12:18 says, the words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. And I just remember like at that point, it was my emotions got the best of me. And I won't even say like what I said was necessarily wrong, but the way I delivered it was 100% wrong. Yeah. And I can justify it, say I did it because, right, I was trying to protect somebody else, or I was trying to, that doesn't matter, right? Because it didn't bring unity. And so I had to go back regardless and just sit still and hear and like listen to all the emotions of the other person. But at the end of the day, what I wanted them to know is I love you. And above all else, I'm going to be here no matter how long it takes. Yeah. And the beautiful thing of the timing of all this is the wedding I was talking about. The whole group was there. Mm-hmm. And God has brought a lot of healing. And we got to celebrate the first of our children getting married. And it was just such a wonderful celebration. And then even Sunday, we got to celebrate one of the girls' birthdays. And like, we are family. We didn't walk away. We listened to each other and took those hard conversations and had to take a step back and apologize and be humble and all the things. But I love when God talks about unity and how important it is and that's why the enemy wants to divide, right? We know that. Because if we stand united, he can't stand against us. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you what I love about that story, and it plays into like this wider thing of how do we engage on these types of topics and conversations, is what's being modeled for us right now is not working through, it's just bailing, right? So you hit those conflict points and it's just easier. It is easier to just walk away and, bring someone else into the circle until that one fractures. And that is precisely what is happening today. And I mentioned this even yesterday, like even on this topic of Black Lives Matter, there were handful of families, maybe more than that, Black families and white families who walked away from believers during that time, because it's easier to just walk away than it is to hang in there and do the work that's required. Because the work is, I need to humble myself. I need to ask for forgiveness. I need to listen more. I need to learn what's actually happening here. I need to learn, take a look in the mirror and see, did I do something wrong? Could I have done that better? Which is also, part of humility. And most people just aren't willing to do that kind of work. And so when people bail, they short circuit their own spiritual growth and development. And so, like Jen, for you and for that group of friends even, to have taken 2-3 years to work through something to get to the other side of healing, I mean, there was no doubt in my mind growth that happened in the lives of so many who were a part of that group of friends that would have not taken place had you followed the cultural lead. And I think that's just what's so important on these topics is the easy thing is to just to bolt, to run for the door, to find the voice that's going to tell you that you're right and they were probably wrong. That's the easy cop-out way, but you're not going to learn anything. You're not going to grow from that. And the church, I've talked about this a lot, but there is so much in Scripture about unity, and it's because it's so critical to our mission. And unity is the pathway to growth. Like there's so much required of a person to maintain unity. And in my younger Christian circles, the idea of unity was uniformity. Like, okay, if we're all just exactly the same, then we'll be united.
Yeah.
But I think as you read through Scripture, that's not at all what the writers of Scripture had in mind, that we would all be homogenous. It's that we would work through our differences to find, at least understanding with one another.
Yeah.
And that's just what's so sorely missing, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And the sad part is that's where all the beauty is on
It is
the other
100%.
side.
Yes.
We were talking about that yesterday, just the work and preparation that has gone into preparing for this series. And as we've done that, it's almost, I think about the analogy of like childbirth. There's like so much that happens, and then there's just really painful process. It can be really painful, but what you get on the other side, what is birthed out of that is life. And it's hard. Not everybody wants to step up to the plate and say, I will bear this thing with you to be able to have the reward that is promised to us. And I think, all of that is all a big reason why churches aren't tackling this conversation. But I want to talk a little bit more about why you think other churches maybe are not, the church at large even is not always delving into these polarizing topics.
Awkward silence.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think I've been the last couple of days. I've gone to I've seen a few posts of friends of mine who either are pastors or who have been pastors who've made just such unthoughtful comments about even racial topics. And it's just so disheartening to me. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know why. I think partly why churches aren't talking about it is they are fearful that it will cause a disruption, and we're so focused on keeping the people we have and we're fearful that we'll lose some people that we have, that we're editing ourselves and not talking about things that are super important to address. And for me, I've talked to a handful of folks and I acknowledged this yesterday because it really didn't occur to me I am mostly an optimistic person, and apparently I'm a naively optimistic person. So, like, I've talked to a few folks who are like, that's what you're about to do just seems like the dumbest thing ever. Like, you're going to get everybody riled up. And I'm like, yeah, well, I mean, that's a possibility, but it's also a possibility that we'll create this amazing space where people can listen to each other, and maybe it'll be like this gravitational pull from our community to hear saying, oh, well, there's a place that you can actually talk about the important things of life and faith.
Yeah.
And so, like, I just have this weird notion, and I might be proven wrong 4 weeks from now, that this is the path to engaging our community that currently thinks the church is pretty irrelevant because they're not talking about these types of things.
Raymond, I would love to hear from you.
Well,
Because, as someone who comes to church and participated in the conversations earlier, what are your thoughts?
He was also my coach for my message. So,
well, one, I am optimistic like Jamie, even though I think, haven't always been the most optimistic person, but I always think, I think this is a country that survived a civil war, Jim Crow, the 60s, all that, and we're still here. Native Americans have suffered just as badly as blacks in this country, and we're still here, and they probably are in a worse off place than we are.
Yeah.
When I say we, blacks see themselves, in this country. But I don't think it's not going to change if we just sit silent and sit in our own tribes and on our own team, and we're playing a game, a battle to win.
Yeah.
We're not trying to win. We're trying to have a united country and united even communities. It just started the community. And in culture, we talk about safe spaces. What should be any more safer than church? 100%. That should be the safest space anywhere.
To talk about anything.
To talk about anything. Because everybody there should be coming from a place of love.
Yeah.
And I was born in the 60s. I'm biracial. Because of my complexion, I can kind of, people really don't know I'm black, So I'm able to hear conversations, and I've also heard comments, and I don't come from a person. See, I come from a different place. How people have arguments and they'll say, well, you think everybody's racist. I come from a space where I didn't experience it. I grew up without it. So when I see it, it bothers me because I know what it's like not to be racist, not to be bigoted, not to judge people by their religion, their color, their gender. Just love people, or like, even if they're not loving people, you just treat people with dignity. So when I don't see that, I'm saying you're not living up to the standard I'm used to. I'm not looking for that. I just know what it's like. And again, if we don't talk, or if we shut down people just because they say one thing that we don't like. I mean, I have friends who I've had battles with about subjects, but I purposely kept them. I haven't turned them away. I might not interact with them every day, but I still will check on them or speak to them because they're not defined by that one issue. We all have things in our life having to do the race. Could be with gender, LGBTQ, anything that we could be better at. So we also have to give that grace to others, to bring them to us, or bring them to Jesus, or bring them to a place of love, and not look at it as a confrontation.
Yeah. Yeah, I think about last week when we kicked off, well, we didn't, it was like the unofficial kickoff of this series, and we talked about love the sinner, and then we transitioned from the traditional idea of hate the sin to love the sinner and leave the rest to Jesus. And that I see that in what you're saying. It's like, in order for us to say yes to welcoming people and having these conversations, we have to let go of our agenda and trust that Jesus is going to figure it out, which can be, I think, one of the toughest things for churches. I know that I grew up in a very legalistic church setting, and I didn't ask questions at all. I didn't have the tough conversations because I knew if I questioned, I may have gotten validation in that. You have that question. I hear you, and here's why you're wrong. And that was not a welcoming environment. And so I didn't learn that. And I think a lot of churches are fearful of that, of having to let go of the agenda to be the one who condemns the sin and let Jesus do it.
And I think we need to talk more instead of, and just like when I went through a starting point, with Pastor Jen and Mike, and I came in, as a part like to prove Christian, to prove this, prove that. And the more we went through the class, the more I realized I don't need proof. I don't need somebody to show me in a textbook or show me something scientific. It's about a belief in Jesus and a belief in what we should be as people. So this is what happens when you get old. You kind of lose your train of thought. So we need to quit worrying about proving a point, citing statistics. Let's talk about our experiences.
Yes,
it's our experiences that make what we are. So instead of talking about something that happened on the news, what is Rochelle's experience with the police? Mm-hmm. What is your parents' experience with the police?
Oh, man.
Stuff like that, and it makes it personal. And the thing we always talk about in this church is relationships. Now it's relational. Now I know somebody who's gone through that.
Yeah.
Right? And now I can have some empathy and compassion and maybe see where they're coming from. And it also goes the other way. If somebody who's kind of bigoted or racist or homophobic or whatever they are, well, maybe have a conversation with them and find out what's happened in their life or who influenced them. That maybe that's why they are how they are. And as they get to know you, as they get to broaden up their world, they'll see something different. Yeah. But again, it's not our job to fix it. It's not my job to fix the bigot, to fix the racist, right? It's my job to love them and bring Jesus to them.
Yeah.
And hopefully that works on them.
Yeah, that's so good. I find it interesting. First of all, you're not that much older than me. So when you say when you get old, you lose your train of thought, I'm right behind you. So, but I find it interesting that you said earlier that your when we had our conversation before I started writing that message, you shared some of your experiences with me, and you said earlier that you didn't. Did you say you didn't experience racism and whatnot? But you do have some experiences.
Not in a tangible, but I do actually in a very tangible way. I was born in 1964. My dad's black, my mom's white. My dad was in the military. I was born overseas. So in 1965, it's time to come back to the States. There were 17 states I was not allowed to live in with my family because of anti-miscegenation laws. Right? So that affected me, and it actually affected a lot of people. So what happened is a lot of interracial couples were sent up to Plattsburgh, New York, Rome, New York, Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, Grand Forks, North Dakota, Minot, North Dakota, or California, because they couldn't live in the South.
Okay, that's very interesting.
Right?
Because my dad was, when my parents got married, they were married in Korea, and he got stationed in Plattsburgh. I'd never even thought of that.
That's how you ended up in Plattsburgh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So like, to me, like, just even hearing that, and it's a pretty, I mean, it's a casual thing that you just kind of mentioned to me, but like the thing that hit me when you shared that with me was, like, I was born in 1968, so we're only 4 years apart. Right. So like this, again, I said this yesterday, but people who experienced racism, when we talk about racism in the United States, we are not talking about ancient history. Right. We are talking about current events. And how many families who went through that were enraged and embittered by it and passed that along to their kids? Well, now their kids are, that's us.
Right.
So, like we're talking about mainstream folks right now who, through their own life experiences, have in their lifetime experienced some of these injustices, things that we, that date thing that I said yesterday, well, that was 158 years ago, I hear that more times than I can count.
To me, it's 50. Well, even if it is 158 years ago, it's really Jim Crow is an extension of slavery.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. Period. It's just the legalization of slavery. To get rid of the slavery moniker, you still had the same folks working the same fields for the same property owners.
Yeah.
After the emancipation.
That's right.
They didn't get to own any land. They didn't get to pass down any houses. There's no. We talked about the generational wealth thing. You don't get to pass any of that down. Then in the 60s, right here in Virginia, we shut down school. We shut down entire school systems.
So one of the folks who was baptized yesterday, I can't remember if it was their mom or a sister, but was part of the lost class where in Norfolk they chose to cancel the school year rather than integrate the schools. And so it's called the lost class of whatever the year of that class was, where an entire class of high school students did not graduate from high school because rather than integrate, the administrators of the school chose to shut the school down.
Yeah.
And if we want to talk, we can talk about one polarizing person. I'm sure Louise Lucas. I'm sure she's very polarized. I know from Portsmouth. I know you know who she is.
I don't even know who that is.
You don't even know who she is?
No.
She's the delegate from Portsmouth.
Portsmouth.
She's the one.
Suffolk.
She's in the Suffolk. Well, one of the things that inspired her to get into politics, whether you like her or not, was she was part of that. Her school system got shut down when she was in high school.
Yeah.
Or middle school, high school, wherever she was. And so that's what drove her in the mid 80s to get into education. And that's what started her political career. So it's not just something that happened. It affects what we do. It's affecting politics. So she's the top. I don't know if she's a state senator or state delegate, but whatever she is, she's in one of the top slots. Wow. So that her experiences are affecting politics in Virginia today.
Yeah.
Whether you like her or not. Right?
Yeah. And I know Jamie talked about that yesterday with it. We're not saying that everybody today is still racist, but we are in systems that were put in place to, make the scales uneven intentionally. And it's still happening. And so we are still experiencing different things. And I notice a lot of folks, when I'll tell them my stories and share my stories, their jaw drops because I'm only 36. I was born in 87, and I have tons of experiences where I have had, an injustice happen to me, and that was because of the system that's in place and the parents that my peers had and what they went through. Yeah, so it's very much alive today.
Yeah, so there's so much to unravel. And that's where these conversations become important, because if you can hear someone's experience, as we've been saying all along, like if you can talk to someone and sit down with someone and hear their experience, it changes your perspective.
Yeah.
And so I didn't get to this part in the message, but one of the things that Raymond had told me when we met was, that one of the solutions that he mentioned is sitting down with a 70 or 80-year-old Black person and ask them what their experience growing up in America was like. And then just listen.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Listen.
Have you done that?
Well, because my grandparents, that's in my life, my father, my father's 82, 83, just a lot of what he's a very optimistic person. He's a very positive person, but the things that I can tell bother him was while in the military. He was in the military for 26 years. So you gotta remember, so even talk about that, going in the military, going to Vietnam and coming back to Jim Crow. Yeah. Going to World War II, coming back to Jim Crow. Not even just the GI Bill, just going back and not being able to buy a house. Right.
Yeah.
But my dad did not like being talked to a certain way. And that's one thing he always instilled in me is do not let people talk to you just any way because of being called boy and being called the N-word while in uniform, while working, So that's one of the things I can tell has affected his heart. And one of the few things I feel that has affected his heart. So that's me. Is that, and that just goes to when you're talking to somebody like that, you're not treating them with dignity. You're not treating them as a fellow human being. Yeah. You're not treating them as a Christian. You're as a fellow Christian. We talked about that. What religious group in this country has been terrorized more than the Southern Black Christian?
Wow.
That physical violence. Who has been singled out more? Maybe other than Native Americans, the Southern Black Christian, fellow Christians. Yeah. So we should feel that, even if you don't agree with all the the platforms and,
Sure.
and whatever the discussions are, just put yourself in the place of a Christian living in your country, being treated a certain way, having your churches bombed, being forced to walk to church instead of taking a bus, or, having all the indignities that you have gone through, even though you are a Christian and you have a fellow Christian who has treated you less than human.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
I think also there's this thing that happens when you are just trying to survive and make it through. And I know I have been guilty of not having these conversations because I'm like, just expect the best of people, just keep going and just keep pushing. And so then you get to this time where you know how healing it is to have the conversation, but then you're also like, oh, I don't want to have the conversation because I think in my head sometimes I don't want to do the Black experiencing today. I just want to be a person and put my feet in the sand. Like I just want to be. But I thankfully, have learned that I have to recharge and refuel because I think that's what God has called us to. He's put us in all of these spaces for a reason at an appointed time. And I was talking to someone this morning, and they were saying, I'm sad that it's been this long. It's taken this long to have these conversations. I'm like, but we weren't ready. Maybe we weren't ready yet to have the tough conversations about our experiences. So I just love all of the stuff that's going around with this series because it's causing me to be more brave and talk about my experiences and talk about how, some things didn't feel good. I at 5 years old had to go and have classes, Black history classes at my church because we were being called the N-word and at 5 years old. And people today still, I'll talk to them. They're like, I've never called someone that. I've never heard of that. And I was like, because you were not, because you didn't have to have that experience. So yeah. With all of these things that people have in their experiences, like you sit down with someone who's 60 or 7, there's so much news, so many things that go down. And we had sort of an intense, heightened version of all of that in 2020. And with a lot of things that happened, there were police violence, riots, marches. And now that we're kind of past that, what are some of the things that go through your mind when you guys reflect on that season?
I think for me, it's so important for me to stay grounded because I have a lot of experience too with different things that have happened to me, that have happened to my mother, and all I can say is, the more you know the Lord and how much He loves you. And Rochelle, like you've been singing this song, like safe in his arms.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
It just kind of releases because I think at the bottom line, we've got people living in fear for whatever reason. And you can sit there through your own experience and say, well, that's not a rational fear. It does not matter. The fact is they have fear and we need to empathize with that. But the bottom line is perfect love casts out all fear. And the more I have gotten to know my Savior, the more I understand what His word says about me, the more I really don't care about the other experiences that I have.
Right.
The more that I can rest, the more I don't have fear. And so when things were happening in Atlanta during that time, where Asians were being attacked and stuff, I actually had to go to a conference at that time. And I had somebody call me and say, are you okay? How are you doing? Like, you're not going to go, right? And I was like, what you don't understand is this is just because the media chose to point this out at this time doesn't mean it hasn't been happening all this time, Yes. In fact, most people have never even heard of the Asian Holocaust, which is greater than how many the Nazis killed, in the Holocaust. And because that wasn't pointed out, people don't know. But my thing is I have such a trust and love in Jesus that it doesn't matter. I'm able to look at somebody and give them the benefit of the doubt. until they prove me differently. I'm able to love them regardless of how they treat me because of my love for Christ. And Jamie, you had mentioned unity, that God has said unity, especially in his church, so much time and time again. And that is what I strive for, because I know that the enemy has no footing whatsoever if we can be unified. And so the fact is that, like, I try, and I'm not perfect. I just told you a story where I am not perfect in that. But as much as possible, I want to just like surround myself in his word, in his presence, so that I'm not fearful, because guess what? We are in a battle. He says that, right? Yeah. We are in a battle, and there are going to be casualties. We know that.
Yeah.
Are we willing to live in such a way that we can battle for the kingdom and bring as many people along with us as we can? Or are we going to battle for our own rights?
Yeah.
We're called to be servants, but none of us really want that, you know? And so I think it's just a lot of things to reflect on as the church. We've got to look introspectively at ourselves, and we got to fix some of this stuff that's going on right here.
Yeah.
Before we ever can dream of fixing the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, for me, reflecting back on, all that happened that summer, it was already such a difficult time. I mean, it was such a weird time. And like you said, Rochelle, you said, it was only 3 years ago, but doesn't it in some ways just seem like forever ago? And like that vigil that we did in the parking lot because we couldn't come inside, I was just like, man, it's hard to believe that was a thing. From where I sit today, I'm actually like I know that season was so tumultuous, and it would be hard. It would be hard to. I'm the eternal optimist. It'd be hard to pull, like positive things out of that. But I do feel as if now, 3 years removed from some of those events, I think as a church we're in a better place. We're in a healthier place. We're having these kinds of conversations that maybe we wouldn't have been having otherwise. And so I feel like there is more unity in our church today. And it's not like we've had a heart for racial reconciliation in our community for a dozen years or so. Like I can't remember exactly what year that was that we, as an elder team and staff team, made a commitment to be just a better reflection of our community, and we were going to prioritize that as a church. And we meant it, and it was a very genuine and sincere effort. But I think it's almost like what Jen said earlier. Working through conflict is the maturing thing. It's the growing thing. And I think prior to the summer of 2020, we'd worked on some things. We'd had some conversations. We'd done a few events where we had racial reconciliation talks and whatnot. But I don't think we really got like tried by fire until that season. And, our mettle was tested. The vision that we had as a church for being that reflection of our community was really tested during that time. And I feel as if we're a healthier, stronger church today because of some of what we were forced to confront and work through then.
I love the highlight you put on exposure. And I think about how while what was happening in 2020 was, it was really evident, then it's been happening.
Right.
And I think that's a good thing too that has come out of the media. I know we are always harping on the media and social. I don't even have social media, but I do think that it has exposed some dark things that now they're in light. And now we can push forward and have those growth experiences that we weren't having before because it just wasn't exposed on the scale that it has been exposed. Even like you said, yeah, well, why don't people know about the Asian Holocaust? You know what I mean? How do we expose these things and the ripple effects of them? And that's one of the main things I think about when I reflect on that time period is like, I'm glad now that these are the stories we all had. I had sharing. We were sharing them with each other, but now everybody else is knowing about it. And one of my favorite examples of that you actually gave also yesterday is with Juneteenth.
Yeah.
My family celebrated that for years. And now I get the day off for it because of all that stuff, that happened. Yeah. And, sorry. And we're able to, just really celebrate freedom in a different way around all of that.
Yeah. And just to that end, the Juneteenth thing, I think I learned about that for the first time. I think it was close to 3 years ago. I think that's about when I first learned about that. Was it from 1865?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, it's not because there wasn't history. It's because we just weren't, you don't, as we said earlier, you don't know what you don't know. I'd never been taught that. And, to hear you say, as a family that you celebrated that for years, was pretty remarkable. Raymond, when you and I were talking, we talked a little bit about some people gripe about Black History Month. And you had a few thoughts around that I thought were worth mentioning.
I don't remember exactly what I said, but you kind
of went through our history of presidents, vice presidents.
Right, what our nation's history is, and I'm not trying to be politically incorrect, is white history, right? 45 of our 46 presidents is more, and more than that is more white male history, not just white history, right?
Yeah.
45 of our 46 presidents, white men, all but one vice president, which is more than 46 white men. So, white men have always been able to vote. White men have always been free, So we're just trying to bring recognition to things on the Black side or the Asian side or whatever side, right. Latinos, Mexicans, whatever side it is that have not been taught in our history books. That's all. We're not trying to take away.
Yeah, and I think to be fair, I do think that is the feeling that many people have. There's a fear that there's history revisionism going on. There's a fear of losing our history, our narrative, or whatever. But it's really just trying to say, no, it's actually far more diverse than that. It's way, there's more to the story. It's not taking away from the story. There's just more to the story.
Yes. It's and I think diversity is such, I don't know why it's a divisive thing, because diversity is the definition of the world. We are a diverse world. So why do you want it to only be certain demographics? If we didn't, I know we're going to touch on other subjects in the series, like women in the church. What would our community be without Pastor Jen, without Rochelle, without Heather, without Rhonda and Debbie? What they bring from the church to our community, why would we want to stifle that? I mean, it's a beautiful thing, So I don't think diversity should ever be fought. It's not taking away. It's just bringing people in. It's welcoming. We should look at diversity as not. They're trying to take something from me. No, we're bringing them into our house. Yeah. We're bringing them part of our group. That's what diversity is.
And in some ways, as we talked about when we met, and I tried to hit on a little bit yesterday, but in some ways, the message of diversity within the church is not a new message. It is going back to what the church originally was. Like we're actually just reclaiming what the church was on the day of its inception, which was a remarkably diverse community of people.
Yeah.
And so, the talk of diversity for those who don't like it and hear it as a trigger word, and it's progressive and all of the things. It's actually the heart of God, and it's all over the theme of the book of Acts is going into all the world. And from the beginning, you have the story of the gospel pushing into Africa and pushing into Europe from the Middle East. That is the story of Acts. It's like the most remarkable, diverse community you've ever seen. And it was unheard of then. And how crazy is it that 2,000 years later, it's almost still unheard of?
Right. Yeah. I was just in Louisiana visiting family, and that's always, a big indicator of, I'm in a different area, because you look at the lack of diversity the deeper south you get.
Yeah.
And I'm often surrounded by my family there, and that side of the family, isn't super ethnically diverse, where it's a little different with my other side of the family up north. And we went to visit a plantation. And one of the things I love about just the history of slavery and that sort of stuff in Louisiana is there's this huge French influence there. And, there's the Creole and all that sort of stuff. So there was even this fight against diversity within the Black community that you see highlighted, especially in the history there, where there were free debutante, rich Black families there down in Louisiana in Nolens. Right. And it was because they were light skinned, because they could pass, which I was actually interested to talk to you about your experience with that. Because and I think it was a means of control. And I think that that's part of the reason why we've struggled with diversity culturally, is because it's a way to control people, because you can see it, you can identify it and say, I can control this group of people, and I can judge it based on how they look. And it even happens within the Black community. The lighter you are, you can pass. They had what you called a field inward or a house inward. And, you're more likely to be a house inward if you were lighter. You looked more like the family, that sort of stuff. So, yeah.
Actually, my earliest experiences with even recognizing race, my difference, is actually with my own Black family members and Black kids I went to school with, because I was told I was not really Black.
Wow.
One, I didn't like, and this is what's so stupid now, because they make jokes about it. Within my family, I don't like watermelon.
What?
So my own family members you're not Black.
Oh man, right. they take your card for that.
Right,
it's true.
And then I had somebody in school because I didn't put any grease in my hair.
Oh no!
Yeah,
and look what happened.
Right. Yeah.
And look what wow. And I had the opposite, where I was always ashamed because I was leaning on the bus window and I was having a grease spot left, and would get made fun of. I was like, that's how I keep my hair moist.
Right,
yeah. Even so, I think with that, the struggle with diversity is but that's how we're controlling groups of people.
Yeah, it's everywhere. It's not just racial. It's within groups, inside of groups also. And I think every ethnic group has that. And has that type of battle.
Right, and that speaks to the larger issue, which is a heart issue.
Yeah,
yes. 100%.
Yeah, so if this is universally true within the Black community, in the white community, in every, the Asian community, all these different communities, they all experience it. They all have levels of it, even within their own communities. It shows that our hearts are the problem.
Yeah.
And so, the solution really is, it's what Jen said earlier, but the solution, and it's part of the reason for this series, is if we can create the space for people to have understanding with one another, then we can get a better look at what's actually going on inside of us. And we can ask the Holy Spirit to do His job, which is, paring away those prejudices that we all carry with us, And I can look at Raymond, and I can look at Jennifer, and I can look at Rochelle, and I see the gift that you all are to the body of Christ, and that's the solution. You know, the goal. One of the things that Raymond said to me is, our goal isn't even so much to, you know, how do you right all of these wrongs over the numbers of years? I don't know that's even. I don't even know that that's possible. But what if the goal was just that the next generation didn't have to have that same experience? And like the fix is we encounter Jesus, experience his love, and we treat each other with that love so that the next generation doesn't have to experience what we've walked through and what generations before us have walked through.
Yeah, that's so good. I think one of the things that we are walking through that we highlighted yesterday was the difference between Black Lives Matter, the statement, versus Black Lives Matter, the organization. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit more into that, just because I think that's such an important thing for us to be passing along, is how you kind of talked about how we don't make these assumptions that we are making of each other.
Yeah, this is the part of the conversation that gets, you know, I guess more controversial. And it's the phrase Black Lives Matter. And I remember in 2020 starting to hear, it's a, you know, I always thought it was just a rallying cry, you know, hashtag Black Lives Matter. And, you know, how could you be offended by that? And then I started hearing the rumblings of, it's the super progressive, you know, communist, fascist, you know, all of the ists organization. So there is a difference. I mean, to be fair, there is a difference. And I did go to the website and I did pile through it. And there are a lot of things on their website that I do not agree with. And so what I said yesterday is, you know, don't assume that someone who is averse to saying Black Lives Matter, or, you know, will not post that or share that or participate in events where that is, because they're standing on principle, because this organization has some problems. So don't assume that people who won't are just automatically, well, they must be racist because they won't say or participate in these things. Black Lives Matter. And I know some people feel very strongly about that. I would say to those who feel that way, while I understand it, because I shared the story of the march for myself, I felt the tension around it also. But I think the vast majority of people who are saying Black Lives Matter are not really referring to the organization. They are referring to the statement that Black lives, in fact, do matter. And so give yourself a little space to not assume that everyone who's saying Black Lives Matter is aligning with an organization. I don't think it's that. It's like I said yesterday, it's like asking for a Kleenex. You're really just asking for a tissue. You don't care if it was made by Puffs or if it was made by Kleenex. You don't really care. You're just saying, I want a Kleenex, I want a tissue. And for the vast majority of people who are saying Black Lives Matter, they are not referring to an organization. So don't also, on the other side, make an assumption, well, on the one side, I'm a racist because I won't say Black Lives Matter, and don't assume that they're progressive, you know, who align with all of these things that organization happens to align with, that you might be out of alignment with just because they do say Black Lives Matter.
Well, here's my solution, and I don't know if it's going to be a solution. Instead of just attacking somebody because they won't support Black Lives Matter, have the conversation.
Right.
What is it about the statement? Oh, well, I don't like the organization. Well, tell me about it. And you might find out you have a lot of agreement on the organization. I don't even know what. I know there's an organization.
Yep.
Never studied them. I don't care about them because that's not what it's about. There is no organization that speaks for Black people. There's no organization that speaks for white people.
That's right.
Or Asians.
Yes.
There's an organization that speaks for Christians. There's a person, Jesus.
Yes.
That's the only spokesperson that's out there for any group of people.
That's right.
Right. Wow. Other than that, don't assume that this organization speaks for blacks, and don't hold it against somebody if they don't like that organization.
That's so good.
Have the conversation.
Such a good insight. Thank you.
Yeah. We also talked about the start of the African Episcopal Church. Yeah.
The
And
AME.
AME, yes,
Yep.
AME, with Richard Allen, and how, he started this based off of some injustices that were happening to them within the church, sadly, when Jesus is our spokesperson for everybody, like you just said, Raymond. So kind of moving us towards the end of our conversation, I think about like next steps, like, okay, so now we're having this conversation, then what happens next? But what do we think like some of the racial tensions are in the church today that we need to push the conversation forward to find healing and more unity?
Good.
I don't think I think it's more of a bigger thing, and it's going to go like to the series. I think there's too much politics in the church.
Yeah.
We can speak on these issues, but we should be speaking to them as a Christian, as a follower of Christ, and what we should do to model Christ in that conversation. I don't think it just has to do with race. I think it has to do with all the topics we're going to discuss.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to know that the church as a whole does not know Scripture, does not know their identity in Christ. I was just talking to a young lady who thought she was going to hell because she has some same-sex attraction. And all I concentrated on was her identity in Christ and how Christ saw her. And I just got word, and I shared the gospel with her. And I just got word yesterday that she accepted Jesus as her Savior.
Wow.
So I think it's as a church, our responsibility is to teach that. What does God say about you? What is your identity in Christ? Because the world will tack an identity on you.
Yeah.
That's what we're seeing. Like even in the Black community, even like, in, LG, I can't say all the letters.
LGBTQ plus.
Thank you. Yeah. They will put an identity on you. Our job is to point them to Jesus. And what does Jesus say to them?
Yeah. Yeah. We should have done a 6th week of polarizing Democrat and Republican. That would have blown the place apart. But I think both of you are right. But I think a lot of these topics are as charged as they are because they have attached themselves to political positions, and that is hands down one of the most polarizing things in our culture, and it's divided the lines through every social issue that there is. And unfortunately, it has done the same with our faith. And so many churches that are, this is a sad but true statement that I'm about to make. The churches that experience the most unity are the churches that are the most partisan. Because they're all in lockstep with one another on their political philosophies. The churches that struggle the most with unity are the most bipartisan. And it's because our nation has become so polarized politically. And when your faith, when your faith is linked to your political position, it poisons your faith. And that's what that is Christian nationalism that we're seeing, this huge rise of right now. I personally think it's one of the greatest threats to the church in the U.S. And the politicization of our faith is, it's so destructive. And I've been called recently woke for and when the person said, they said that I was woke, and then they said they wanted to give me a chance to defend myself, which I was so honored by the privilege of being able to defend myself against being woke. And I said, if you by woke you mean nonpartisan, guilty, because I have political opinions. They do not make it into my messages, and they should not. The gospel is apolitical. It rises above our politics. And if you are more concerned about the next election than you are about advancing the cause of Christ, your faith has been poisoned by your politics.
Wow.
And I can just say this, this is just a life experience for me, is I have very many good friends. I have no idea what their political beliefs are or what their stances are on cultural issues. Because if it doesn't come up, we don't talk about it. I know what they are as a person. I know how they treat me. I know how I see them treat others. I don't know what their politics are. They don't inject it to me, and I don't inject mine to them. And it is possible to know people and not talk about politics. I know that's a crazy idea. And what's even funnier is Kimberly and I are different political parties. We have our different stances on many issues. We love each other to death. And if we can coexist in the same house, in the same bed, with some of the beliefs we have that are opposite of each other, you should be able to walk into church.
That's right.
The same way.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm going to say one thing, and I told this to Jamie, and it changed me on how I think about things. Is there's an individual, and he wears a MAGA hat to church every week, and one person who hugs him every week is Tyler. So that assumption, because you wear a MAGA hat, that you're this. Or that
make America great.
Yes. Or if I see you wear a MAGA hat, I'm going to think this of you. It's not the case. Whatever the reason is, that person's wearing that MAGA hat. I know they're in church every day. I know they're interacting with other people every Sunday. And I know from what I see, I don't see him mistreating anybody.
Yeah.
I might not believe politically in what MAGA stands for, just like people don't believe the BLM, but until that person does something to show me differently, why should I assume the worst of that person?
Yeah.
And that's just things we need to take into life.
Yeah. All of us need to challenge our assumptions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. Well, I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation about these polarizing topics as we go throughout this series. Did anybody have any last insights you wanted to share before I wrap this up?
I just wanted to say you did a great job, Rochelle.
Oh, thank you. It's so sweet. I was very nervous because there's all the things here. All the things. Well, that's all the time that we have for today. Until next time, we remind you to be sharing this with others on social, and we'll see you next Sunday, where we're continuing our series, Polarizing. And as you can see, it's going to be juicy, y'all. So you don't want to miss out. Thanks for being here, friends. Let's all go and be love.